Good snap, good hold. Kick is no good. But a flag is down in the secondary near the Washington sideline.
On the defense number 97. It's a 5-yard penalty.
That was Dexter Lawrence, who came across early. And now a 43-yard try for the win. Good snap, good hold. Kick is good. Washington wins it.
Oh, man, what an entertaining football game last night. Decided to play the whole highlights for you there. If you're watching on YouTube, please don't sue me. NFL Network, I have 9 listeners, so no reason to do that. Though the Washington football team gets the victory against the New York Giants. Unbelievably entertaining and fun game. Daniel Jones looked awesome. Terry McLaurin is good at football. The Washington football team's defensive line is vaunted four across the board, both defensive ends and both interior defensive linemen. All 4 of them are first-round draft picks, including Chase Young, who was second overall. And they played like a bunch of dudes who are not vaccinated against COVID and have recently had the disease. That's not funny. We know for sure that Montez Sweat is not vaccinated. We're pretty sure Chase Young isn't vaccinated, and they sure played like it because that Giants offensive line is trash. And, man, they sucked. What a great game. So if you missed it, this is what happened. Just real quick, back and forth. Daniel Jones, Taylor Heineke, et cetera, et cetera. And then Taylor Heineke gets the Washington football team in field goal range, aided by an offside penalty by a big guy that couldn't get on sides for the spike. You know, when you make the play, spike the ball, the fat guy couldn't get on sides in time, so they get 5 extra yards. They're in field goal range. They kick a 48-yard field goal. It's missed, but Dexter Lawrence, former first-round pick from Clemson for the New York Giants, jumps offside, had no bearing on the play. The kicker missed it wide right. Then he made it the second time around on an untimed down 5 yards closer. It was not a great kick. It was ugly. It was a terrible kick, to be frank. But, man, what an entertaining Thursday Night Football game. Back-to-back weeks with Thursday Night Football was absolutely awesome. Football is the greatest thing that's ever happened. This is interesting to see. Let's do some news, narratives, takes, and gambling. I'm Nick. Subscribe, rate, review, etc. We're going to look at some lines. We're going to look at some stories. First thing I want to get into is I'm not going to cover this because I have some hot takes about what sports journalism is and what it isn't. I don't know. I went to journalism school, so I know some stuff, you know. For me, journalism is one of like 4 things. Either A, it helps you vote. B, it helps you spend, save, or invest your money, like actual money, like the Wall Street Journal and Financial Times. C, it helps you pursue health and medicine, and that can be a lot of different things like parenting, which hospitals to go to, things like that. C, it helps you do your job better, or D, it's scientific journals. Other than that, it's just entertainment. And I say all that to say that the coverage of the United States women's gymnastics abuse situation over the last, decade or multiple decades, I think, with Larry Nassar, it continues to happen. This is a sports podcast, and like I said, I don't think that's a sports story. I think that's a story of collusion and cover-up and sexual assault and just a disaster that involves athletes. And anytime you see a story like that, the big boy journalists, the people that don't work for blogs like SB Nation or whatever, no disrespect to them, I'm just making a point, the big boy journalists show up. Yesterday, the most famous gymnasts in American history, including Simone Biles and I think Michaela Maroney, Ali Raisman, victims of Larry Nassar's, they went to Congress and they laid out the FBI's failure. And I'll be honest with you, it made me ashamed that I pay and file taxes. So if you want to read that, I put a link in the show notes. What a nightmare. Like, what is the point? What is the point? So that's not a sports story, but I'm not going to not mention it because the congressional hearing was gut-wrenching and honestly flabbergasting. So it's a Football Friday. Let's talk about football. We'll move away from that. Do I have anything else? Oh, the NHL is they're expecting a 98% vaccination rate. The NBA is not requiring vaccine mandates. We shall see how that turns out. We're finding out right now, as Pro Football Talk reported, Mike Florio, all about the vaccines. The teams with the lowest vaccination rates and the teams that have had so much distraction in the offseason, 0-4 so far. And if their locker room has even a tenth of the mess that society has over vaccines right now, I can imagine that it's going to seep into some stuff. Storylines from this weekend in college football that you're going to want to pay attention to. Number one, Notre Dame is mean. This is a tweet from Unnecessary Roughness. The podcast produced band has brought the world's largest drum. They have this drum. It's on a push cart. It looks like a Mormon push cart. If you know the Mormons settled the West. It's not going to the game at Notre Dame because the Irish won't allow them, Purdue, to use the main tunnel, and the visiting team tunnel won't fit the drum. Dude, Purdue has like two things. They have astronauts and they have this drum. Notre Dame's not going to let them use the drum. And honestly, it makes Notre Dame look really bad, not because they're being mean to Purdue, but because like I'm cool being mean to a rival. What it makes them look bad for is thinking that Purdue is a rival. I thought you guys were all about USC and whatnot. Storyline number two, Portland State apparently having a tough time getting fans in the stands. Portland State head football coach promises to buy beer for people that go to the game. Got to love that. All right, let's start. We're going to preview some college football. Let's just talk about some games and some storylines. Let's start with betting. The most bet college football game of the weekend, no doubt, by like a lot of money and individual bets placed, right? So there's two stats, like how many bets are placed and how much money. And the money thing is interesting because sharps tend to bet a lot of money. Like they invest in sports. I call it sports outcome investing. So if a lot of people are betting, like the Cowboys, for example, will get more bets on them, but money will be elsewhere. The individual amount of bets placed and the bets that have placed thus far have all been on Penn State and Auburn. Auburn to cover the spread, which is different here and there. Right now, they look like they're 7.5 point underdogs on the road at Penn State. So a lot of money on that. As we look into storylines, and I talked about the defensive situation between Auburn and Penn State, I think that's really good. What's really interesting to me is both teams have quarterbacks that have not developed into what they have shown that they could possibly be. And at this point, it's one of those things where they're not going to take a step forward, in my opinion. So this game is going to come down to which team screws up less. And the only time under James Franklin that I can actually remember Penn State kind of screwing up at home happens against like Ohio State. When they do screw up, it's against an opponent that doesn't quite have the horses to come back. And I think you can go ahead and throw Auburn in that category. Auburn is the Wisconsin of the SEC. They're so good at defense. They're good at fundamentals, all of that kind of stuff. But they're just missing some things that can get them over the hump against the teams that are consistently over their head. Those things that they're missing are a wide receiver and a really elite quarterback. And in the past 10 years, when they've had literally one of those two things, they're really good. When they've had them both, they're like the best team in the country. They lost to Florida State on the last play of the game, which Florida State had a miracle comeback. They were getting whooped in that game with Nick Marshall was the quarterback at the time. And then, of course, Cam Newton. Everybody thought Bo Nix could be that guy. He hasn't taken the step forward. Sean Clifford, same thing for Penn State. He looks like he can be that guy. He looks like it. Well, news for you guys, he isn't. Like he just isn't. So this game is going to be really enjoyable in terms of that. But as far as a favorite, the fact that Penn State is favored by 8 is crazy to me. Crazy. I think that Penn State will win. I don't see a scenario where Auburn wins without a pick six or a kick return or some crazy effort. Penn State's just significantly ahead. They have more better players on individual matchups, but Penn State is not good enough to win by 8 points. There's just no way. Let's look at the college football slate right now. Top 25 other games that interest me. Arizona State, BYU is interesting. The unfortunate thing for both of these teams is they're playing ranked opponents, and one of them is not going to be ranked next week, which, that just is what it is. But I guess West Coast getting some ranked matchups. We have 3 ranked, unranked matchups. That's one of them. One of them is Penn State and Auburn. And the final one is Alabama at Florida. So technically that's a ranked matchup. Dan Mullen did really, really well with Mississippi State. However, their expectations were low. Florida's are not going to be low, so we'll see how that goes. We all expect Alabama to whoop that ass. Just to be frank with you. Purdue's at Notre Dame. Notre Dame is... It feels weird for the Irish because they are always overrated in years after they do well. I don't think the Toledo game was a fluke. I think it was a hangover, but I don't think that they were like 18 points better than Toledo. I think on most weeks they'd be like 7 points better than Toledo. So Purdue at Notre Dame. Purdue's going to piss them off. We'll see how it goes. Other interesting games, Nebraska at Oklahoma. I just want to see how bad this Nebraska thing gets. We all do. Let's be honest about that. But other than that, this is a kind of a boring week in college football because for the most part, conference play really we haven't got to the point where there's just consistent conference games week in and week out. Non-conference game that'll be interesting. West Virginia will be a lit up crowd as Virginia Tech comes to town. Virginia Tech's in the top 15. Rankings are basically Bitcoin. No one understands them. They kind of mean things, but maybe they don't. Like, who cares? Heisman Trophy watch, Matt Corral and Bryce Young are the favorites so far to win the Heisman. We'll see how that goes. Matt Corral has had 79 consecutive snaps without a Pro Football Focus turnover-worthy play, which that means a lot to Pro Football Focus. But Ole Miss they lead the country in plays that are attempting to passes 20 yards or longer with average depth of target. So they're going to be a high-flying game. The over-under in that game, I believe, is 70.5. Smash the over. Tulane's got a really good quarterback themselves. All right, let's move on to pro football storylines to watch this weekend. We'll cover it on Monday. The Lions and the Packers thing is really interesting because the Packers could hit rock bottom. I don't think they will, but that is certainly something that could happen. In the early slate, Bills at Dolphins. I kind of care, I don't care. It's one of those things. The interesting game in the early slate is Bengals at Bears. Everybody wants to see Justin Fields play. The Bengals, are they good? Was that just because they got to play the Vikings? Maybe they did take a step forward. Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, we'll see how that goes. The biggest spread of the weekend is the Browns are favored by 13 over the Houston Texans. The Texans, I heard this joke multiple times in podcasts over the course of the week, was like, people watch the film. Of course, all the beat writers got to watch the film, and they said something to the effect of, I've never seen a team play so bad and win by so much. Because the Texans destroyed the Jaguars. Oh, yeah, we didn't talk about this. Urban Meyer, the quote, when you read it, he said there's no chance he's taking the USC job, but when you watch him do that, he's kind of kicking his shoes, and there's no chance. There's no chance. I think what happened was he wanted to coach USC. He was living in L.A. doing the Fox college football coverage, and he wanted them to pay him like $25 million a year, and they were like, all right, dude, get out of here. And then he's like, I'll go to the pros then. Now he has a contract in the pros where no one's reporting how much money he makes, which means that the agent who did the deal is embarrassed. And now he's in the NFL, and he's like, oh, it's actually really hard when you can't cheat and just get the best players. So, shoot. He looks miserable. Jaguars are a 6-point underdog against the Broncos. Ooh. Might have to bet that, unless I already have. We'll take a look. Other interesting games, Niners, Eagles. Is Jalen Hurts for real? The San Francisco 49ers have the best run-blocking situation I've ever seen in my life. They are preposterous. They're the best run-blocking tight end. Literally, most people think in the history of the sport, the best run-blocking tight end. Well, since the forward pass became a big deal, so we'll say post-1985. George Kittle is preposterous. So what they do is they put him next to Mike McGlinchey, the number 2 run-blocking right tackle, and then they will move him to the left side next to Trent Williams, the number 1 run-blocking left tackle, and then they just annihilate people because they run the stretch zone behind them. And the Lions have a C-plus defensive line. It is not trash, and they were not in the game. The Niners had like 4 third downs, 3 of which came in the second half. They're going to run it down people's throats, but the Eagles have a great defensive line. That'll be an enjoyable matchup. The matchup that I've been waiting for years and years, and none of the beat writers or podcasters, none of them talked about it. I'm so mad, and it's not quite what I wanted because there's an injury. It happens once every 4 years, people. Once every 4 years. This could be the only time it happens when they're around their prime. So there should be a dedicated camera to Quentin Nelson versus Aaron Donald. There has never been a guard like Quentin Nelson who is strong enough and fast enough to even deserve to be in the same athletic category as Aaron Donald, who he kind of is, but he kind of isn't. Aaron Donald's on a different planet. But if there was a guard that can handle him consistently, play in and play out, it's Quentin Nelson. I want to see, A, the chess match. Are they going to move Aaron Donald around? And B, what's going to happen? Because I suspect that for the first time in Aaron Donald's career, we're going to see him lose a couple reps. However, Quentin's had the foot thing, he's had the back thing, he had the COVID thing. Who knows? But I want to watch it. The idiot media have turned this into Carson Wentz versus Matthew Stafford. That's stupid. Carson Wentz. They've turned it into Frank Reich versus Sean McVay. That's stupid. Oh, wait, did I say Carson Wentz? Yeah, Carson Wentz sucks, and Matthew Stafford is good. That's not a conversation. They turn into Sean McVay versus Frank Reich. That's stupid. Sean McVay. Frank Reich, kind of, but definitely Sean McVay. The game is Quentin Nelson versus Aaron Donald. You people disappoint me. You make me sick. Afternoon games on Sunday, Atlanta, Tampa. That's a huge spread also. Vikings and Cardinals. People love the Cardinals. Hey, there are teams in the West Coast. Maybe we should pay attention to them. The Cowboys and the Chargers. Everyone is hammering the Chargers. They're favored by 4 points. The Tennessee Titans, they got their asses whipped by the Cardinals. They are on the road in Seattle. Seattle having fans for the first time in a while. 6.5 seems small to me. Man, I'm excited. Football season is back. Should we pick some college games? Let's look and see what I think is going to happen here. I think week 2 is always the week that you can get some upsets because these teams, they schedule these big games in week 1 and then they're hungover. So you try to schedule a cupcake in week 2, and the teams that struggle with the cupcake are the teams you're going to want to watch. That Notre Dame is the one that screams out to me. Texas A&M screams out to me as well, but they scheduled back-to-back cupcakes. This time it's New Mexico. Kent State at Iowa, no. Georgia Tech at Clemson, no. Tulsa at Ohio State, no. South Carolina at Georgia. Georgia's ranked number 2. South Carolina beat them and ruined their season a couple years ago. You know what? That's the one. But it's at 7 p.m. I got to watch Penn State Auburn. Virginia at North Carolina. Bronco Mendenhall is a great coach. Arizona State at BYU. It's a decent slate, but all the good games are in the afternoon. But the upset to watch, I'm going to land on South Carolina, Georgia. Georgia's favored by 11. Ooh, man, that's going to be interesting. Doing the first NFL deep dive coming up on Sunday morning. We're going to be talking about the lawsuit that the St. Louis Rams and the city of St. Louis are filed against the Los Angeles Rams for moving, including to move to LA, and what it would be like if Roger Goodell and Jerry Jones take the stand. And we'll deep dive into the specifics of the lawsuit to get ready for NFL Sunday morning. Like, rate, review, subscribe. Thanks for hanging out. I'll be back and better than ever on Monday morning.